The polished marble floors gleamed under the janitor's steady hands as he moved silently outside the boardroom. Inside, the CEO's voice thundered, echoing to the corridor like a warning shot. Why is that janitor always hovering around? It's a corporate meeting, not a cleaning session. Laughter followed. The janitor didn't flinch. He just kept mopping, eyes steady, like he'd heard worse. He'd been invisible in this building for months, until now. The boardroom door swung open. The CEO stepped out, nearly slipping on the freshly mopped floor. "Watch it, mop boy. You want to clean? Go do it somewhere else. Stay out of my sight." The janitor looked up, locking eyes with the man who had just humiliated him in front of the entire board. His lips parted slightly, but he said nothing, not yet, because what the CEO didn't know was that the janitor sweeping his hallway was his own blood. He never spoke unless spoken to. Every morning at 6 a.m. sharp, the janitor arrived quietly through the staff entrance. Faded boots, navy uniform, same mop, same rhythm. While the executive sipped imported espresso, he scrubbed coffee stains off tile. While interns laughed about weekend trips to Paris, he wiped their muddy footprints from the hallways. They never bothered to learn his name. "Hey, mop man," they'd snicker. "You miss a spot." He never responded, just nodded and moved on. The whispers followed him down every corridor. "I heard he lives in his car. He's probably an ex-con. Why is he always lurking around the executive wing?" But what no one noticed was how he lingered just a second longer outside the CEO's office. How he memorized the names, the voices, the layout of the top floor like it meant something personal. Some said he was just slow. Others said he had no ambition. But the truth was, he was waiting, watching, listening, because once long ago, his mother had walked these same halls, not as a cleaner, but as the CEO's former secretary. She disappeared suddenly, her name erased from company records, and when she died last winter, she left behind more than just photos and bills. She left behind a letter, one line burned in his memory. "Your father still works in that building. He just doesn't know you exist." He didn't come for revenge. He came for the truth. It was Tuesday morning when the new intern barged through the hallway, rushing with 2 cappuccinos in hand. She didn't see the janitor crouched beside the glass railing. The collision was loud, messy, and entirely one-sided. "Oh my God!" she gasped, coffee soaking through her shirt. "Ugh, you again? Don't you have better places to mop?" He looked at her, quiet, calm. "Are you okay?" She scoffed, then turned away without apology. Inside the boardroom, tension simmered. The company was in trouble, hemorrhaging money from a failed tech investment. Executives argued about layoffs, restructuring, and desperate acquisitions. The CEO slammed his fist on the table. "None of these numbers make sense. Our projections are off by 20%. If we don't fix this before the next quarter, we're done." The room went quiet. Outside, the janitor had paused mid-mop. He recognized the numbers scribbled on the whiteboard through the glass. His mind clicked into place, not because he'd studied finance, but because he'd lived it. He remembered the same models from old notebooks his mother had kept from when she helped the founder build the original business. He took a deep breath, knocked gently on the open door. "Excuse me, sir," he said. "I think I know where the gap is." The room turned. Silence. Then snickers. Did the janitor just interrupt the board meeting? One exec whispered. The CEO narrowed his eyes. "This better be about a broken toilet." "No, sir," he replied, holding his ground. "Your supply chain algorithm's outdated. The warehouse logistics model assumes a 48-hour delay buffer that was removed last year. You're still calculating based on old timelines." The COO blinked. "Wait, how do you—" The CFO cut in sarcastic. "Oh, I'm sorry. Are we taking investment advice from janitors now?" Laughter erupted. The CEO stepped forward, furious. "Let me make something very clear. You clean toilets. That's your job. So stick to it, and leave the thinking to the men in suits." A hush fell. The janitor stood still, humiliated but not broken. He looked at the faces around the table. None saw him. None heard him. Not really. He turned to leave. But one old board member kept staring, eyes narrowing like he'd just seen a ghost. That night, after everyone had gone home, the janitor sat alone on a bench outside the building. Shirt still stained with cold coffee, hands still trembling with quiet fury. But not because they laughed at him. He was used to that. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the one thing that had led him here. A crumpled, yellowed letter written in a hand he knew better than his own. His mother's. If you're reading this, I'm gone. And I'm sorry. There are things I should have told you sooner. But I didn't want your life to be shaped by his shadow. You were born out of something real. Even if he never knew, he was married, powerful, and I was just his secretary. But for a moment he saw me, or I thought he did. Your father's name is Charles Whitaker, CEO of Whitaker & Co. He never knew you existed. I made sure of that. The name hit like a brick to the chest every time he read it. The same man who had fired off cruel jokes today was his blood. His mother had left the company quietly after discovering she was pregnant. No lawsuit, no confrontation, no scandal. Just silence. She changed her last name and raised him on whatever job she could manage. Bookkeeping, tutoring, even house cleaning. She never spoke bitterly. She never once said a harsh word about the man who'd moved on without her. But her eyes always dimmed whenever the company's name came up on TV. After she died last year, he found a letter hidden inside a small photo album. The envelope was fragile, but the truth it held was heavy. He didn't come to this company to make a scene. He didn't want revenge, and he didn't want inheritance. What he wanted was to see for himself who this man was, to look him in the eyes, to understand how someone could forget where they came from so easily. He applied for a janitor position under a different last name. He chose the lowest uniform on purpose. He didn't need power to see the truth. He just needed access. And now, after months of scrubbing marble floors and hearing Charles Whitaker bark orders like a king, he realized something. His father hadn't changed. He still couldn't recognize real value. Not in people, not in ideas. But this time, someone was watching. Someone who had every reason to stay silent, but one final reason to speak. 3 days later, the company's crisis reached its boiling point. Sales had dropped another 12%. Their top investor pulled out. Employees whispered about unpaid bonuses and empty retirement funds. Inside the boardroom, Charles Whitaker's temper exploded. If we don't secure a bailout by Friday, we file Chapter 11, the CFO whispered. No. Charles slammed his fist on the table. We don't fail. Not under my name. I built this from the ground up. From the hallway, the janitor listened, mop in hand, silent as ever. But this time he stepped closer. He walked into the boardroom, slowly, deliberately. You didn't build this alone, he said calmly. The room went dead silent. Charles turned, nostrils flaring. You again? One of the executives muttered. Who let him in? You need to leave now. Charles snapped. Before I have security drag you out myself. The janitor didn't flinch. What you need is to stop pretending this building is still standing because of you. People like my mother, people you used, were the ones who held this place up when you didn't even know what respect meant. Gasps echoed around the room. Security. Charles barked. 2 guards entered, but before they could reach the janitor, an elderly voice cut through the tension. Wait! All heads turned. It was Harold Green, the company's longest-serving board member. His hand shook slightly as he stood, eyes locked on the janitor's face like he'd seen something long buried. Son, Harold whispered, voice brittle. What's your mother's name? The janitor hesitated, then replied, Maria Delaney. The old man froze. He fumbled through his leather briefcase, pulling out a creased photo, a black and white office party picture from over 2 decades ago. There, smiling in the center, stood a young woman with almond eyes and a quiet strength in her smile. This woman? Harold asked, holding it up. The janitor's eyes softened. Yes, that's her. Charles scoffed. This is ridiculous. That woman hasn't worked here in over 25 years. Harold turned to him sharply. Exactly. And do you remember why she left? Charles blinked. She resigned, moved away. Harold's voice hardened. No, Charles. She disappeared after your wife found out about her. She was your assistant. You always work late. We all knew. The silence was deafening. Charles looked pale now. That's absurd. There's no proof. Harold stepped closer to the janitor. What's your birth date, son? April 3rd, 1998. Harold nodded slowly. I had a feeling. I kept this photo all these years. But last month, I had my doubts, and I ran a background check. Quietly. I even asked for a DNA sample from a discarded napkin. He turned to the board. The results came in yesterday, and they confirmed what I feared. He faced Charles. This janitor is your biological son. Mouths dropped. Charles stumbled back, knocking over his chair. No, this is blackmail. Harold stepped forward. No, it's the truth. And here's more. In Arthur Whitaker's original trust, the founder's will, there's a clause. If any legitimate descendant of the bloodline is found, regardless of acknowledgement, that heir becomes a primary shareholder. You can't be serious, Charles stammered. But the COO was already checking the legal file. It's here, she confirmed. Clause 7. It's legally binding. Eyes turned back to the janitor. No longer just a man with a mop, but a son who never asked for a legacy, yet had it by right. And in that boardroom, full of shocked silence, the power had just shifted. The boardroom buzzed with shocked whispers. Executives exchanged stunned glances. Some looked down, ashamed. Others just stared at the janitor. Now no longer just a janitor, but a living proof of a truth buried in marble floors and forgotten files. Charles Whitaker stepped forward, face red with fury. This is a scam. DNA tests? Old letters? You expect me to believe this man is my son based on some ancient clause? The COO raised her voice. It's not ancient. It's enforceable. I just call it legal. The founder's will was never amended. Any blood heir, regardless of recognition, is entitled to full voting rights. Charles's voice cracked. This is my company. No, Charles, Harold replied. It was your father's, and now it's his. The legal advisor entered moments later, briefcase in hand. We've reviewed everything. The DNA results, the founder's clause, and employment records. He turned to the janitor with calm authority. Legally, you are now the majority shareholder of Whitaker & Co. A long pause. Then the advisor added, as of this moment, Charles Whitaker is removed as acting CO, pending board confirmation. Charles exploded. You can't do this to me. I gave my life to this company. The janitor stepped forward for the first time. He wasn't trembling anymore. His shoulders were square, his voice steady. You gave your life to your title, he said quietly, not to the people who held this place together. You mocked my uniform, he continued, but I wore it with pride. He paused. My mother mopped these floors every night. When no one saw her, no one thanked her. She was invisible, just like me, but she did it so I could stand in this room one day and look you in the eye. The room fell silent. The janitor, no, the son, turned to the board. I didn't come here to take anything. I didn't want revenge, but I won't apologize for being who I am. I came to understand a man whose name I never had, and I found out that power without humility isn't strength. It's weakness. He looked at Charles one last time. I'm not here because of what you built. I'm here because of what my mother survived. He placed the old letter on the table, along with a copy of the DNA report. You can keep the corner office. I don't want the furniture or the car or the title. He looked around. But I will take the responsibility. Because someone in this building still has to stand for dignity, for decency, for the people you never saw. Charles's eyes welled with rage, then defeat. He stormed out of the room. No applause, no respect, just silence. The janitor remained standing, tall, composed, and seemed for the first time not for the mop in his hand, but for the legacy in his blood. 3 months later, the company had changed, but not because of press releases or PR stunts. The new CEO, once a janitor no one noticed, sat in a corner office with high windows and polished floors. But the most striking thing wasn't the view. It was a glass frame mounted behind his desk, holding his old navy blue janitor uniform. The tag still read, Maintenance Staff, Level 1. Every visitor asked about it. He always answered the same. That's the title I earned before anyone knew my name. He didn't fire half the company or seek revenge. Instead, he rewrote the rules. He introduced respect first policies where every employee from reception to boardroom was called by their name, not their job. He launched a scholarship fund in his mother's name, helping children of single parents attend college without debt. He created a mentorship program for custodial staff, offering promotion tracks never available before. And he made sure every conference room had a simple brass plaque. Strength doesn't wear suits. Sometimes it holds a mop. One rainy afternoon, the front desk buzzed with an unexpected visitor. It was Charles Whitaker. His suit was less sharp, his voice quieter. He handed over a resume and asked, awkwardly, if there were any consulting roles available, even part-time. The receptionist passed the file upstairs. Moments later, she returned with a response. The CEO had written one line in bold ink. Some lessons can't be bought. They must be learned. The application was declined. Charles turned and walked out alone. Upstairs, the man once mocked for cleaning hallways leaned back in his chair and looked at the uniform behind him. He smiled, not with bitterness, but with peace. He hadn't destroyed his father. He'd become a better man. Never judge someone by their position. The man pushing a mop today might be the one signing your paycheck tomorrow. The woman serving coffee could hold more wisdom than an entire boardroom. And sometimes, the ones we overlook are the ones carrying the greatest legacy of all. Respect isn't given to titles. It's earned by truth, by grace, and by those who rise without stepping on others to get there. Because the janitor they all laughed at, he didn't just clean the floor. He wiped the dust off forgotten legacy and reminded them what leadership really looks like. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you think twice about how we treat others, hit that subscribe button. Because on this channel, justice always finds its way, and the underdog always has a voice.